Alright, Go Gadget comic book review. This is Irredeemable Ant-Man #1, featuring the Irredeemable Ant-Man being irredeemable. But is he truly irredeemable? Most people would say yes, because of his attitude towards women. But they are overlooking that this came out in 2007, before we were all gloriously woke. It was quite commonplace back then for some men to ideate some of the sleazy stuff that the new Ant-Man gets up to. You would ask someone what superpower they want, and they would say invisibility to spy on girls' locker rooms. I was never into that. I always wanted to fly. The more irredeemable thing in my eyes is this comic uses my favourite narrative device ever, which is we open showing the new Ant-Man in action, and then cut away to 6 months earlier to show how he became Ant-Man. We have a decent intro here with a mugging, and then Ant-Man saves the woman and convinces her to go on a date with him as a means of thanks. I didn't think this is too problematic. You can read this as just saving someone and then asking them out, rather than him saving someone to ask them out. It is a decent sequence, and that the grey area of his intentions exists. It is good for establishing the character and his somewhat vague motives. Cut to 6 months earlier. Here is a lousy use of 2 pages on account of everyone having already seen the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier in other comics before. No need for a double splash to showcase it. It's not even necessary to have a single page splash image. Just have a little panel at the top showing it. Maybe I am being unfair, but I think double page establishing shots are some of the worst uses of comic book real estate. I should point out that I looked at this character's first appearance 2 weeks ago. I talked about the character with broad strokes and about where he ended up in the Marvel Universe, which is nowhere. But I do think this is a fairly unique character, at least for Marvel. Our third Ant-Man is Derek Sullivan, a very low-level S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. The writer of this is Robert Kirkman, and this is the last thing that he did for Marvel. I was going to talk about why and how he left Marvel, but I couldn't find the really petty thing Tom Beevort said about him, so I'm not going to bother. Anyway, I only wanted to bring that up to say I much prefer Robert Kirkman's banter here to any banter Michael Bryan Benson has ever thought of. Elsewhere on the helicarrier is Hank Gordon, and he is creating a new Ant-Man suit for S.H.I.E.L.D. It is now an armor that allows the wearer access to the shrinking powers and the growing powers. And I believe in maintaining the writer's intent when they were writing a comic. So this is Hank Gordon. This is the real Hank Gordon. It isn't a Skrull imposter. It somewhat devalues Derek Sullivan as an Ant-Man to say that his suit and beginnings are tied to a random Skrull instead of the original Ant-Man. How would a Skrull know so much about Hank Gordon particles anyway? Two other characters that we have in this tale are Chris and Veronica. Chris is Derek's supposed best friend, and Veronica is Chris's girlfriend. Derek will screw them both over by the end. I am not sure I really buy the idea of Hank Gordon selling out to S.H.I.E.L.D. Even if his intention is just to find a new Ant-Man to replace the dead Paul Rudd, developing it in-house for S.H.I.E.L.D. seems more like something Iron Man would do. In some regards, I suppose the Skrull thing works, but I didn't want to accept that a bunch of stories where a writer was writing Hank Gordon were later overturned pointlessly and made into someone else. All you really need here is to focus on Hank Gordon a bit and give him some exposition for why he is working for S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Basically, Chris is seeing Veronica, but Derek fancies Veronica, and Chris and Veronica have kept their courtship secret from him. It's like a bloomin' soap opera in here. There is some nice interconnectivity running through Robert Kirkman's Marvel books. Here, Chris mentions the evil Iron Man from Kirkman Team Up. Often you also see the Rachel Diamond robot from his show Captain America run show up in his other books. So with all the characters established, we can begin the story proper. Derek and Chris are stationed as bodyguards for Hank Gordon. They are told very little about the assignment. They are basically doormen, really. We have some more banter here. They debate whether they are in charge of keeping people out or keeping something in. Which brings us to this bit where Hank Gordon tries to leave his lab and Derek knocks him out. Realising that they have screwed up, they look inside and they spy the new Ant-Man armour. There is one thing that I think was lost pretty quickly, and that is where you're being misled into thinking Chris is the protagonist here. That Chris is Ant-Man. I guess with even the title, Irredeemable Ant-Man, it is a bit obvious he is a red herring. And all this is happening during the Wolfman story arc, where Wolfman was brainwashed into being an assassin for Hydra. So here is a quick flashback of him attacking S.H.I.E.L.D. Otherwise, there would be little action in this issue. This here is technically a flashback within a flashback. We are actually at the halfway point of that story where Wolfman is defeated and about to be deprogrammed. This is after Captain America beat him in a fight. It was great. The tie-in here seems a bit tacked on, and as I said, seems to be there to force some artificial action into a story with none. The other character in the mix is Derek's boss, Mitch, and he will become a constant thorn in Derek's side. Derek is a slacker and not a great agent, and now it seems that his friend has stolen this prototype suit. It also has these mechanical arms that come out of his back, which they quickly drop from this Ant-Man's power set. And they dropped probably because they were copied and pasted from Spider-Man's armour. And then we have... Here is our first real flavour of how much of a sleazeball Derek is. Derek lies through his teeth to Veronica about Chris cheating on her and not caring for her because he wants to worm his way in instead. Jump cut back to the present where we find out, as a surprise to no one, that the Ant-Man who is starring in this book is Derek and not Chris. Nice of him to wear Ant-Man colours so that his date would know it is definitely Ant-Man. You know, this is kinda slow. That's not a criticism. It sounds like a criticism. It always sounds like a criticism. But for the tone, you would expect a quicker pace. I think Derek Sullivan Ant-Man is at best an acquired taste. Most people hate him. But I always had a soft spot for this story about a guy who grows and becomes a slightly better person. I'll give it 7 thumbs up.